Stray hero dog jumps into pool to save drowning child. What happened next shocked everyone. The splash echoed across the empty pool deck. Sophia's small body struggled beneath the water, arms flailing, her face disappearing below the surface. Her silent fight went unnoticed, the club completely deserted. No lifeguards, no adults, just her. Focus heard it. A sharp echoing noise that pulled him from his search for scraps behind the nearby dumpster. His ears perked, his head turning sharply toward the pool. There, beneath the rippling water, a small figure thrashed. Without hesitation, the dog sprinted. His paws echoed against the tiles as he charged closer, tail low, eyes locked on the water. Sophia's movement slowed. Her arms weakened. Focus leapt. The cold water engulfed his body, but he powered forward, his legs kicking with desperation. He reached her just as her body began to sink, his teeth gently grabbing her shirt. With all his strength, he tugged, fighting against the water's resistance. Sophia's head broke the surface with a gasp, but she was too weak to hold herself up. Focus paddled harder, dragging her toward the edge. His nails scraped the concrete as he struggled to pull her from the water. Her small frame finally limp but breathing. A voice, sharp, terrified. Sophia, Carolina, her mother, had just returned from the storage room, a stack of folded towels clutched against her chest. They fell to the ground as she dropped everything, sprinting across the deck. Her heart pounded. The sight of her daughter, wet and pale, lying on the tiles with a soaked, ragged dog standing protectively beside her, made her knees buckle. "Baby, oh my God!" Carolina knelt, cradling Sophia's trembling body, pressing her ear to the child's chest. A weak cough. Water sputtered from her lips. She was breathing. Tears filled Carolina's eyes as relief washed over her. Then she noticed Focus, soaked, shivering yet unmoving. His eyes remained locked on Sophia as if waiting for confirmation that she was safe. Carolina blinked, barely able to process. "You saved her?" Focus lowered his head slightly, backing away, but Carolina's voice was firm. "Wait." He paused, uncertain. With Sophia still coughing gently in her arms, Carolina whispered, "You're a hero." Carolina wrapped Sophia tightly in a towel, her hands trembling as she pressed the child closer. Sophia's breath steadied, her face pressed against her mother's shoulder, still pale but safe. Carolina kissed her damp hair, her heart pounding, her chest as the reality sank in. Focus stood a few feet away, dripping wet, his head lowered as if unsure of his place. His coat clung to his thin frame, and his ribs showed faintly beneath the soaked fur. He watched, tense, his body rigid despite the chill. "Stay," Carolina whispered, voice still shaky but gentle. She wanted to approach him, to offer thanks, but fear lingered in his cautious stance. Sophia shifted, weakly whispering, "Mommy, the dog, he helped me." "I know, baby, I know." Carolina's eyes softened as she met Focus's gaze again. For a moment, she felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude mixed with curiosity. Who was this dog? And why did he seem so familiar with danger, as if he'd done this before? Focus stepped back, shaking the water from his fur in a spray that made Sophia giggle weakly. Carolina smiled despite herself. Then, as if the weight of the moment became too much, Focus turned. He started to pad toward the open gate leading back to the street. "Wait!" Carolina called, carefully shifting Sophia against her shoulder. Focus paused, glancing back. His amber eyes met hers, conflicted, but he seemed ready to leave, as if unsure he belonged in this moment. "Please, don't go." Her voice softened. "You saved her life. You're coming home with us." Focus hesitated. The kindness in her voice, the warmth he hadn't felt in so long, made his chest tighten. Yet instinct told him to keep moving, keep drifting. Before he could decide, Carolina took a careful step forward, balancing her daughter in one arm while extending the other toward him. Sophia, her small voice still weak but clear, whispered, "Please stay, doggy." Something shifted. Focus lowered his head, letting Carolina's hand brush gently against his damp fur. His muscles relaxed slightly. "Let's get you both warm," Carolina murmured. And so, with Sophia safe in her arms and Focus following closely, they left the poolside. 2 lives forever changed by the hero who nearly walked away. The warmth of Carolina's small living room wrapped around them like a protective cocoon. The scent of lavender lingered faintly in the air, mixing with the dampness clinging to Sophia's hair and Focus's fur. A soft blanket covered Sophia, who lay curled on the couch, drifting in and out of sleep as her body recovered from the shock. Carolina knelt on the floor beside Focus, gently patting him with a towel. His fur remained damp, but he allowed her touch, though his body remained tense, ready to bolt if she pressed too hard. His eyes, golden and watchful, stayed locked on Sophia, as if still protecting her even from across the room. "You saved my daughter," Carolina whispered, her voice tight with unspoken emotion. "I don't even know where you came from, but thank you." Focus blinked but didn't break eye contact. He didn't need words. His actions had spoken louder. Carolina's fingers traced the worn collar around his neck, the leather cracked and barely holding together. There was no tag, only a faint imprint where one might have once been. She exhaled, the ache of wanting to understand this quiet guardian, pressing against her chest. "Were you someone's, or have you always been alone out there?" she murmured, more to herself than to him. Focus tensed slightly but didn't pull away. Suddenly, Sophia stirred. Her voice was hoarse but clear. "Mommy, can he stay?" Carolina hesitated, her eyes flicking from her daughter back to Focus. She wanted to say yes, to offer him the comfort he deserved, but logic fought back. They barely made ends meet. Another mouth to feed, even a dog's, wasn't something she had planned for. "We'll see, sweetheart," she said softly, brushing Sophia's hair from her forehead. "He can stay tonight. We'll figure it out, okay?" Focus's ears perked, sensing the hesitation, but he didn't move. He stayed, rooted to the spot, his gaze steady as if he understood this was temporary. He had lived temporary his whole life. That night, as the house grew quiet, Focus curled up near the couch where Sophia slept. Carolina watched from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, heart conflicted. A hero, a mystery, and perhaps just maybe, a second chance for all of them. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, casting a pale glow over the modest living room. Sophia slept peacefully, her breathing steady, the pale flush of the previous day finally replaced with her usual warmth. Focus hadn't moved from his spot near the couch all night, his body curled protectively close, as if standing guard. Carolina watched from the kitchen doorway, arms folded, still processing the weight of it all. The near tragedy, the way Focus had saved her daughter without hesitation, the loyalty he showed, even now, as though bound by some silent promise. A soft whimper broke her thoughts. Focus shifted slightly, his eyes blinking open to meet hers. They were tired eyes, eyes that had seen too much. "Hey, boy," Carolina whispered, stepping closer. Focus lifted his head, watching her carefully but not retreating. She knelt beside him, gently pressing her hand against his fur. It was warmer now, mostly dry, but the scent of the pool still lingered. His ribs were too pronounced, his body lean in a way that spoke of hunger more than agility. A survivor. "You must have been on your own for a long time," she said softly. "But you didn't hesitate to save her. Why?" Focus didn't answer, of course, but his head lowered slightly, almost as if he understood her words. Carolina felt the sting of unshed tears. She had seen heroes before, first responders, nurses, everyday people, but never like this. A quiet voice broke the silence. "Mommy." Sophia stirred, blinking awake, her voice softer than usual but steady. Carolina rushed to her side, kneeling beside the couch. "I'm here, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" The little girl offered a sleepy smile. "Better. Is he still here?" Carolina glanced back at Focus. He hadn't moved, still watching them both with quiet patience. "He's right here," she assured her daughter. Sophia reached out a small hand, her fingers brushing the soft fur on his ear. "You're a good dog," she whispered. Carolina swallowed hard. She didn't have much, just enough to get by, but As she looked between her daughter and this dog who had saved her life, she knew that some things couldn't be measured by what they had. Focus belonged here. For now. And maybe, just maybe, forever. The next few days passed quietly, but the memory of that life-changing moment lingered in every glance exchanged between Carolina, Sophia, and Focus. Though unspoken, a bond had formed, one Carolina couldn't quite explain yet felt undeniable. Focus had settled into the rhythm of their home. He remained near Sophia constantly, his eyes tracking her every movement, never far from her side. Whether she played with her dolls on the carpet or sat reading picture books, Focus lay close enough to reach her. Protective, present. Yet Carolina couldn't shake the questions lingering in her mind. Sitting at the kitchen table, she stared at the worn collar still around Focus's neck. The cracks in the leather told a story of time and hardship. No tag, no identifying mark. She'd called the local shelters, no reports matching his description. No one was searching for him. She exhaled slowly, brushing her hair back as she watched him. He seemed content here, yet something about the way he stayed so alert, so still, made her wonder. Had he always been alone? Or was he waiting for someone who would never return? Sophia broke the silence, her small voice drifting from the living room. "Mommy, look!" Carolina turned to see her daughter gently placing a worn stuffed bear in front of Focus. The dog tilted his head, eyes soft, then lowered his muzzle to sniff the toy. He didn't play, didn't paw at it like a typical dog. Instead, he simply rested his chin on the floor beside it, keeping his gaze on Sophia. "He likes it," Sophia whispered, giggling softly. Carolina knelt beside them, her heart aching in ways she hadn't expected. She had been so focused on their survival, bills, work, the endless worry, that she hadn't noticed how much this quiet presence had already begun to heal something in their home. Still, the fear lingered. Could they keep him? Should they? She reached out, brushing her fingers along Focus's damp fur, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "Thank you," she whispered, barely audible. Focus didn't move, but the way he gently nudged Sophia's stuffed bear closer, his silent understanding spoke louder than any words ever could. The rain tapped gently against the window as evening settled over the small house. Outside, the world felt quiet, yet inside, Carolina's mind raced with questions she couldn't ignore. Focus lay curled near Sophia, his body relaxed but his eyes half open, as though resting yet still alert. Sophia had fallen asleep on the couch, again her head resting gently against Focus's side. The sight stirred something deep in Carolina's chest, gratitude mixed with worry. They couldn't keep him. Could they? Finances were tight. Every dollar was stretched thin between bills, groceries, and keeping their modest life afloat. Adding a dog, no matter how remarkable, felt reckless. Yet how could she send him away when he had risked his life for Sophia? When he had become part of their home? A soft sigh escaped her lips. She knew she had to make a choice. Soon, Focus shifted, lifting his head slightly as if sensing her inner turmoil. His amber eyes met hers across the dim room, calm but questioning. He didn't beg, didn't whine. He simply watched, steady and patient, as though he understood what was coming. Carolina knelt beside him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to do this. I want you here, but I have to think about Sophia, about what's best for both of you." Focus didn't flinch. Instead, he laid his head back down beside Sophia, his breath steady, as if silently answering her. Fears with presence alone. The next morning, determination filled Carolina as she made calls to nearby shelters again. She needed clarity, answers. Somewhere, someone had to be missing him, but the response was the same. No matches, no lost dog reports, no one searching. By the time she hung up, the weight on her chest felt heavier. This wasn't temporary anymore. Focus wasn't just passing through. He had chosen them. Later, as she prepared breakfast, Sophia approached the kitchen, holding the old stuffed bear. "Mommy," she whispered, voice soft, "if Focus leaves, who will keep me safe when you're Not home? The question cut deeper than Carolina expected. She knelt, wrapping her daughter in a gentle hug. And in that moment, the decision became clear, not because of fear, but because of love. They needed focus. And maybe, just maybe, he needed them too. The sun peeked through the curtains, casting soft streaks of light across the living room floor. Carolina sat quietly at the kitchen table, watching Focus as he lay near Sophia, his head resting gently on his paws. The quiet rhythm of the morning felt different, warmer, safer. It wasn't just about Sophia anymore. Focus had become more than just a stray who had saved her. He was part of them now. Taking a deep breath, Carolina reached for the phone. Her fingers hovered over the buttons, but she hesitated. One more call to a shelter. One last attempt to see if someone was searching for him. But the thought made her chest tighten. Before she could dial, Sophia appeared, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Focus lifted his head immediately, watching her closely as she shuffled toward her mother. "Mommy?" Her voice was soft. Carolina crouched down, brushing a strand of hair from Sophia's face. "Yes, sweetie?" Sophia hugged the worn bear tighter to her chest. "Are we keeping him?" Carolina hesitated. She had spent so much time worrying about whether they could, financially, practically. But in that moment, she realized the decision wasn't about those things. It was about trust, healing, family. She glanced at Focus, whose gentle gaze met hers as if sensing the unspoken question. "Yes," Carolina whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We're keeping him." Sophia's face lit up with a smile that reached her eyes for the first time since the accident. She dropped the bear and knelt beside Focus, wrapping her arms carefully around his neck. He didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply pressed his nose gently against her cheek, accepting the affection with quiet patience. Carolina watched, her heart swelling. Later that afternoon, as Carolina filled a bowl with kibble she had picked up from the store, Focus approached cautiously, pausing just before the bowl as if unsure it was truly meant for him. "It's yours," she reassured softly. He ate slowly with a quiet dignity, as though grateful for every bite. This wasn't just about saving Sophia anymore. Focus had saved them all. And in return, they had finally given him the one thing he had never truly known: a home. Days passed, and Focus settled into the rhythms of his new home. The once wary dog had softened, his guard lowering with each passing moment spent by Sophia's side. His presence brought a sense of calm, like he had always belonged. Yet beneath the peace, Carolina couldn't shake a quiet unease. It wasn't fear of the responsibility or financial strain anymore. No, it was something deeper. Something in the way Focus reacted to certain sounds. The sharp clang of a metal pot, the distant wail of a siren. Each time his body would tense for just a heartbeat before he settled again, as though forcing himself to remain calm. But today, something was different. Carolina was folding laundry in the bedroom when she heard it, Sophia's laughter echoing. From the yard, she peeked out the window and saw Focus standing protectively nearby, as Sophia tossed a ball, his eyes tracking it with quiet focus. A simple, happy moment. Then a sound pierced the air, the distinct screech of brakes from the street. Focus froze. His body went rigid, tail lowered, ears flat. A deep, low whine escaped him, so subtle it might have been missed if Carolina hadn't been watching. In that instant, he wasn't just a dog in a backyard anymore. He was remembering. By the time Carolina made it outside, Sophia was holding the ball, watching Focus with a frown. "Mommy, what's wrong with him?" Carolina knelt beside Focus, running her hand gently along his side. His breathing slowed, but his eyes remained distant, as if lost in something too painful to explain. "It's okay, boy," she whispered. Focus blinked, exhaling a deep breath before lowering his head, pressing his muzzle gently into Sophia's small hand. "See?" Carolina reassured her daughter. "He's just remembering something, like how we feel sad sometimes." Sophia nodded. Slowly, then leaned closer, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. Carolina felt the ache grow stronger. Focus wasn't just any dog. He had a past, and now more than ever, she was determined to find out what, or who, he had lost. The winter sun hung low in the sky, painting the living room in soft hues of orange and gold. Focus lay near the fireplace, his body relaxed but eyes half closed, as if still standing guard. Sophia sat beside him, absently running her fingers through his fur while humming softly. Carolina stood near the window, watching the scene with a heart full of quiet gratitude. The fear, the uncertainty, everything that had weighed on her heart when Focus first appeared, felt distant now. But there was one last thing she needed to do. She crossed the room and knelt beside Focus, gently lifting his worn collar. The faded leather felt fragile in her hands, but something caught her eye, an old engraving barely visible hidden beneath the buckle. She had never noticed it before. A single word: home. Her breath caught. Not a name, not an address, just a word. Home, she whispered aloud. Focus shifted, his ears perking up slightly at the sound of her voice. His amber eyes met hers, calm and steady, as if he finally understood. He was already home. Sophia's voice broke the silence. "Mommy, can he stay forever?" Carolina smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. She nodded, her voice steady but soft. "He already has, sweetie. He's ours now, forever." Sophia's face lit up with pure joy as she wrapped her arms around Focus's neck. The dog leaned into her embrace, pressing his face gently against hers in a silent promise. That night, as the house grew quiet, Carolina sat on the couch, her gaze lingering on the once stray dog who had become their protector. She no longer needed answers, because sometimes the greatest stories weren't about where someone came from, but the family they found along the way. And for the first time in a long while, their little home finally felt complete. Sometimes, the most unexpected heroes enter our lives just when we need them the most. Focus didn't just save Sophia. He showed us the true meaning of loyalty, healing, and belonging. If this story touched your heart, let it touch others too. Comment below and share how this made you feel. Don't forget to hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs inspiration today, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us of the beauty of kindness and second chances, because stories like this deserve to be remembered.